Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. Make sure you go check out all my books. Start with the best-selling Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and the 2 workbooks that are fillable that go right along with it, the Threat Assessment and Defense Assessment workbooks. Also, for your children, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. Now, that's a book of pictures you give to your children, and you let them go through it, and in the pictures are lessons about security and awareness, and you, the parent, go over to teamlittlebigs.com and download the free lesson plans that go with each picture. All of this is a package that makes your life, your family more aware, safer, and able to look at yourself from the attacker's point of view. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's 2 accompanying workbooks, and The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, and the lesson plans that exist on teamlittlebigs.com. Go check them out wherever books are sold. And let's start the show.
I probably surprised everyone, Neil, and I stand by it. I think, when I was sworn in as police commissioner, one of the main announcements I made was a new youth initiative. I think that we can do a lot better. I think it's money spent on the youth is money well spent. I think that if we don't get it right, we're going to be dealing with them in the criminal justice system, and nobody wants that. I think a lot more I could say on this. I think it's incumbent upon all agencies, and I'll lead by example. We can find the money to fund youth programs in this city. I think we can do it. I think we can do it without...
But by taking it out of, Commissioner, by taking it out of monies right now allocated to police.
Absolutely. And I stand by it. And I think, Neil, I think it's crime fighting. I really do. It's just crime fighting in a better way.
This is Jonathan Gilliam back in on the Experts Podcast as the world goes crazy. And sometimes coming on and doing this podcast does not fulfill me because it's the same thing every single day. It's the way it was in April. Even though I had the virus, there wasn't anything reported new on television, in the media at all. Now I'm looking at the stuff today, even though seemed like I had a lot to talk about yesterday. Sitting down and actually looking at the different things going on, it's just the same. It's the same nonsense. All the leftists in this country, around the world, really, they're on the move. And the things that are happening are so ridiculous and so unworkable. None of the stuff that they come up with, there's no solutions. It reminds me of little kids when they play in a sandbox and they want to. This, by the way, none of this stuff that you see going on has anything to do with George Floyd. None of it, because the people that are going to make out in any of this, financially or as far as power goes, through all these different movements that are going on and the attempts that people are making in power to overthrow law enforcement, the only people that are going to make out or are going to prosper from that are going to be the politicians and the leaders of these activist groups. And if you look at kids, like really small children, when they play in sandboxes, there's always, everybody wants, it's all theirs. Listen, children, Jesus preaches that we should love the children and protect them. And by all means, I would lay my life down for a child in a second. Wouldn't even give it a second thought. But they're the most self-centered creatures that there are. And you would think that adults, as they grow older, become less self-centered, but that's not the case. The human population, and especially those on the left, are so self-centered. It's unbelievable how self-centered they are. The difference between a child's self-centeredness is that they're helpless. So they're born into the world and their focus. I mean, listen, if I took you and put you in the middle of nowhere and then you woke up, you would become very self-centered because your survival depends upon it. And that's the way it is with a child. But you would, and as they're introduced to things, material things and popularity or love, for instance, they become more and more self-centered. But you would think as people grow older, they would become less self-centered, especially when you have to live in a society. But that is just not the way things are taught to people these days. 50, even a little bit longer, maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago, people still had to work. I mean, they had, in order to eat, you had to work. Now, if you live in a big city, they actually push you to not, they give you incentives to not work. And then they give you handouts, which the American people pay. And it's self-centered. And what you're seeing in all these protests, it has nothing to do with George Floyd and his death. Look, if George Floyd's death was such a big issue to these people, and they were such caring people and really did not want oppression upon any human being, then they'd be completely outraged, calling for the conviction and death penalty for people like Cuomo, who, I don't know if you realize this number, but over 50, I didn't even realize this, over 50,000 elderly people perished within the past 2 months because of governors' policies to put COVID patients in with the very people that they knew are the most susceptible to dire consequences from the COVID virus. And yet they insisted that these elderly homes and rehabilitation clinics for the elderly they mandated that they take COVID positive patients. So because their words were they didn't want COVID patients to be discriminated against. Yet they had, like here in New York, they spent $100 million on a whole facility in Long Island, Eastern Long Island, that didn't get one patient. The Jacob Javits Center was empty. The ship that came here, the Navy ship, relief ship, completely empty. They didn't take COVID patients, but yet they sent them to elderly clinics. 50,000, over 50,000, 48% of all fatalities in this country were elderly people in these homes. And if the same people that were so concerned about George Floyd, and I do, and you can listen to my previous shows before George Floyd was killed, I was talking about the reality of law enforcement and how it has to change. That they're not the overwatchers that they think they are, and the authority perception of authority and the perception of their job had gone completely out of control. And I had stated that numerous times, but you come up with an effective solution. And these people have no solutions. And it's just like the children in the sandbox. Mine. Minneapolis, they have no solution. They just want to get rid of the cops. But don't be mistaken into thinking that they're doing this, like Obamacare, let's just get it passed and then we'll figure out how to implement it or make it. There was all a lie. That was Republicans allowed that to happen in that Republican Party. Remember, I give you this disclaimer that I always do. I'm no fan of the Republican Party either. It's full of what we call rhinos, but really leftist and people that are totally unethical and have no solutions for anything. It's a career base for them. It's like if somebody from since I've written books, and once you write a successful book, it's very difficult to follow up with more successful books. You may have great books. All my books are great. But if I had a publisher that just said, every book that you publish, I'm going to give you, I'm just going to pay you $1 million a year just to write books. I mean, most people that are in a position to write, that could write a book, would eventually just write one a year, because that's all they got to do to get paid. And that's the way that's the way Washington, D.C. is. And then if that publisher was known to always give out that check, more and more people would come over there and start and do less and less in order to get that job. It's just a given $1 million a year. It's not like that, though, folks. Trust me on that. The publishing world is not like that. Washington, D.C. is like that. These activists and people who run nonprofits, I've had a lot of these, whether it be Black Lives Matter, you need to look at the research of who started Black Lives Matter. In fact, we'll probably do a show on that. But they're communists. They started Black Lives Matter. Has almost nothing to. Now, the people that join Black Lives Matter or march in support of Black Lives Matter, they may have goodness in their heart. They may want solutions, but even them on a whole, they're not offering solutions. And then you have people going out and spray painting BLM all over the place, all over monuments, not just, Civil War monuments. They're spraying on everything. There's no effectiveness to anything that they're doing. Defunding police, not going to do anything. Getting rid and disbanding police, not going to do anything. That soundbite that you heard there at the beginning of the show was Commissioner Shea of the NYPD, who I tweeted yesterday saying that, or on Sunday I tweeted saying that the rumor was out, and I had sources, several police officers write me and say that that the commissioner was resigning, the chief of department of the NYPD was going to resign, and between 300 and 800 police officers were going to retire immediately. As it turns out, well, I got kind of nailed it. Between 300 and 800, 600 officers are now reportedly going to retire. No word on the chief of department, what he's going to do. But Shea, who you heard there at the beginning of the show, is decided not to retire. He said that those were rumors, or resign. He said that those were rumors because of an email that was passed around. But the reality is, it's no better. He's going to do the bidding for de Blasio. I didn't want to play that whole interview, but as that interview went on, it got worse and worse and worse. That is not a solution. Do we need to take care of children? Yes. Is that going to solve all the problems? No, because you have to fix the inner city. And I've had people tell me, you focus too much on the inner city. It's racism. It's not. It's the inner. Most of this stuff comes from, as I've pointed out over and over again, the aggressive tactics of law enforcement predominantly come not from the military. They may use military style tactics that are effective, but don't be thrown back when they say they use military tactics. What do you think the military is? It's a group of men who defend freedom, and they find the best way to strike an enemy or to defend against an enemy. And yes, law enforcement is going to use some of those things, because many of the violent criminals in the United States and around the world are just as dangerous, if not more deadly, because here in the United States, they live under the protection of the Constitution. So you have to be much more careful in the way you respond to these violent criminals. But overall, the aggression, not the tactics, the aggression is set by the location in which the officer works. And I've said this and shown proof of it over and over again on this show. But you don't see any of these protests going into the inner city. They're not protesting there. They're wanting to take $1 billion from the NYPD or more. And de Blasio's wife lost. They can't even account for it. We know it wasn't lost. I'm sure she knows where it went, but they can't account for $1 billion that she was put in charge of for homeless yoga. $1 billion of tax money. Nothing comes out of that. So they're going to take $1 billion and they're going to spend it on youth programs $1 billion or more. They're going to spend on youth programs as the commissioner was just saying. And that's not going to do anything. One thing, we don't even know if any of that money will get there. Two, if you don't change the society around the children, you can do all the programs that you want. It doesn't matter. They're being programmed in their society, which is told that, how many times you turn the TV on and you hear, I'm black, or they're black, or black man tastes. It's hilarious. I was reading through Drudge. As I always say, I go through all these different things, and Drudge is the funniest one, because I go through Drudge and there's a headline about in Seattle where a guy gets out of a car. He tried to drive his car through a protest. He gets out, shoots a guy, and then takes off in the crowd. They ended up catching him. Just the headline says, man drives through protest, shoots one person. Well, it was a black guy that did it. The guy in the car that got out and shot the person was black, and he took off running. But they're not going to say that in the headline. In fact, it didn't say it in the entire story. Yet there's this guy in Virginia who went down to go, he says, his girlfriend or something says that him and his son and her went down to see what was happening because they heard one of the Civil War monuments was being taken down. They went there, and anyway, a scuffle ensued, and he ends up plowing through people in his car, and he got arrested. And then apparently he's a supporter of KKK, right? Which, I to be honest with you, those people are few and far between. I grew up in the South. I don't know anybody. If they are, they're not made known to me. But they immediately point out that he was a white guy affiliated with the KKK, and he ran those people. Now, I think it should be pointed out that that's the case. I think it needs to be, people need to be woken up so that they know that these weirdos still exist. But why not tell that who the other guy is? Maybe he was MS-13, or maybe he was a part of some other gang. I know when he got out of the car, it looked like he had a Glock with an extended 30-round mag. That's what it looked like from what I could see. And none of that was brought up in the headlines or throughout the entire story. I turn on CNN. Constantly, people are talking about white or black. You are black, or I am black, or I am white, and you are white. It's not people, and are they oppressed, or are police too aggressive, and why are they too aggressive? That's not what they say. In my entire life, I have never seen as many people spouting about color as I do now. And it's not the people who are racist. It's the people, well, not the people who would technically be categorized as a racist person against people with dark skin. You don't hear from most of those people. Very few. Who you hear from, which I think is worse than the racist people, are the divisive people. All the people that are screaming and hollering about that person's black, or that person's white, or, black this, white this, white that. Those are the people, their motivation is to divide. And that's who is organizing all of this. You don't hear any of these people talking about unity. None of their plans have to do with unification. None of them. Even the ones that are talking about, like Commissioner Shea there, about working in communities with youth programs. It's going to do nothing to unify anybody, because the most powerful voices in these communities are activists. And those activists are either socialists, or they are separatists, or they are just troublemakers because they want anarchy. And that's the truth about what's going on. Let me give you another example of the stupidity that is out there. I'm going to play this other video that I saw today. And this is the president of the city council, I believe is who she is. Let's see here. From Minneapolis. And she is saying, let's see, here it is. I believe, yes, she's the city council president, Lisa Bender, and she was on CNN. So listen to what she has to say here.
move by the city council certainly got a lot of people's attention last night, and we're so happy to have you clarify this. So what are you trying to do? Are you hoping by dismantling the Minneapolis Police Department that you will be getting rid of the police department?
I think in Minneapolis.
Now, this is Allison Camerata interviewing Lisa Bender. And you're going to hear kind of from Allison Camerata's voice that she's kind of trying to make sense of this. This is coming from one of the most ignorant people on television. I've met Allison Camerata numerous times on Fox and Friends and then over at CNN. She asks the dumbest questions and seems to be one of the most clueless people. She's either extremely clueless or she just rolls with it so she can get a paycheck. I'm not sure which one it is, but either way, it's ridiculously idiotic. So if she is kind of taken back by this, it's pretty stupid.
Watching George Floyd's death and the actions of the 4 police officers that were involved has been a huge wake-up call for so many in Minneapolis to see what many already knew, which is that our police department is not keeping every member of our community safe. And so I think step 1 for us is to tell the truth. 9 council members from communities all across the city of all different backgrounds standing together to tell the truth and say, this system isn't working for too many of our neighbors for too long. Our reform efforts have failed, and we have done many, many attempts at reform and new leadership in the department and many things. And we still see this tragic death. And so I think the wake up of our community is what's driving the city council's announcement yesterday. And now the hard work begins for us to rebuild systems that really work to keep all of our community safe.
But to be clear.
Now, she said, we've done all these things. We tried all these things. Obviously, whoever's coming up with these ideas is a moron. They're not coming up with effective ideas. That is where the whole problem starts. You see a problem, you should fix that problem with an effective solution. But see, leftists in this country and around the world don't have effective solutions. That's the problem. This guy kills this kid. Let's get rid of the chief. They don't change the training. In fact, they probably cut the budget of training. They don't look around and try to introduce the communities with law enforcement. Because listen, don't lie to yourself. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't lie to yourself. There are good people in the inner city. Being good has nothing to do with your color. Really has nothing to do with whether you're poor or not. One of the greatest memories I have as a kid, we lived down this road in Strawberry Plains, Tennessee. It was just right outside of Knoxville. I think it was Strawberry Plains Road, I think, or where we live. But anyway, it's kind of known as Strawberry Plains. It's a very nice area now, very well built up, kind of an affluent neighborhood. But it was not when I lived there. It was a dirt road. And we my father worked at Elm Hill Meats, which was like a slaughterhouse. And then we lived in this shack with pump water and outhouse on this farmer's land. And I remember our neighbors, it was like something out of a movie. They lived just up the road from this. I barely have the memory because I was pretty much in diapers. And I remember there was an old couple who were black. Never looked at them as black or anything. I mean, although I was under 5 years old, I remember just vaguely how sweet they were and nice, and how they would sit out on their little porch in this little, basically just a wood house. And there was my mom, my dad never, ever instilled anything in us from a racial standpoint. In fact, my father, who grew up in North Carolina, used to tell me this story. He passed away when he was 41, and I was 13. But he used to tell me that he had been, I think it was in California or somewhere, had been gone, maybe it was Arkansas, and he was in California at that time. And the first black guy that he saw, he ran up to him, gave him a big hug, and said he was so happy to see a black guy, because he was tired of being in the South. This is the world that I grew up in, right? Not seeing color, not seeing any of this stuff that is going on around here. And always being told and taught if something's broken, figure out a way to fix it. And as I grew older and got more experience and trained and worked amongst some of the most incredible human beings in the world, both in law enforcement and the military, I was taught over and over and over again, if you have a problem, find out who knows the best way to fix it, get their advice or find out how they do it and do it that way. And if you can figure out a better way, do it that way. Train hard, get that tactic down and do it that way. You don't hear any of these solutions coming from these people. Let's go on and listen to this some more.
You're not talking about reform. The word dismantle is intentionally different than reform. This is more than reform. This is dismantling. I mean, activists who support this are calling this a police-free future.
Which, by the way, is a communist concept that you won't need a government. You won't need authorities. Now, this is the way communism thinks, that they will cause anarchy. This is a very simplistic way they think, but you cause anarchy, which causes conflict. And amongst that conflict, a synthesis will occur. Basically, if you put your hands together, interlock your fingers, but don't make a fist with your hands. Keep your fingers elongated. That is what they believe the synthesis will happen. And then they'll just cut off the tips of all those fingers because those are where the activists, those are the loudest people. That's what they call normalization. It's socialization or socialism, which brings these people together through conflict. Once those people are together through division and stuff, and they're not together because they're unified, they're together because they're fighting, you can then go in and do what's called normalization, where that's where the troops are in the streets. And although they want to get rid of police and this and that, now the reality is in order to get to the utopia, what communism says is that all this conflict will occur. You'll have troops in the street and things will be normalized. And that's where you get rid of all the troublemakers, all the loud people and all the freedom seeking people. And then, because what you're trying to do is get the people who are basically followers and people who won't make a ruckus. And then when you get rid of all the troublemakers, you supposedly, according to communism, you can take the tanks and everything out of the street, get rid of the government. And then if you can work, you work. And if you can't, and you provide for those who can't. And if you can't work, then you are able to take from the people that can. But it never works out like that. That is a Satanistic, godless thought. And these idiots don't even want to go through the process of normalization to get to their socialist communist belief. They think they can just get rid of authorities and everything will be hunky-dory, or they're using that as a ploy to get rid of and cause the chaos, which could also be the case. And I'm sure there's a lot of them there. It's a high Muslim population, and I'm sure they think that they can police their neighborhoods the same as they do over in the Middle East with less police. Although you go over there and they have the hit squads or the Islamic squads that go around, and if you're not doing what you're supposed to do in their religion, you're gonna get the beat down. I mean, I guess that's what they want here, and they're on the way they describe it. Listen to the way she describes it.
Yeah, and a lot of us were asked if we could imagine a future without police back in 2017 when we were running for office. And I answered yes to that question. To me, that
because she's an idiot.
Future is a long way away, and it would take an enormous amount of investment in things that we know work to keep people safe. I mean, for a lot of folks in our community, stable housing is a safety issue.
So this is what she's saying is going to keep people safe. Stable housing is going to make sure that a killer doesn't come into your home, which Allison asked her about here in a second.
Having access to healthcare is a safety issue. And so having, I
don't know what these people think. If she speaks for all these people, she thinks that housing and healthcare are what keep you safe. No, those are things that keep you sheltered and things that keep you healthy. What keeps you safe is law enforcement, fire department, EMTs, which those will all be cut. Don't think that they won't. They'll be cut as well in these places.
one thing folks are asking is to stop investing so much money in this militarized police force and instead.
Now, that was not me talking in the background. That was either Allison Camerata and a producer or somebody on the set, or it was her behind her camera. I'm not sure exactly, but it almost sounded like they're like, what is this girl saying? But let me rewind it just a tad.
A safety issue. Having access to healthcare is a safety issue. And so having, I think one thing folks are asking is to stop investing so much money in this militarized police force and instead invest in the things that our community really needs. So, I know the statement was bold, and I stand by that bold statement, but the work ahead of us will be long. It will include every member of our community. It has to. And, I think we have It
has to. Now, I don't know if she realizes this, but she lives in a country where people are free, and they may not want to be involved in that, especially something as stupid as they're trying to do. People are just not they're not going to want to show up. Now, there's a lot of people showing up at these rallies, but those are primarily activists and some people who are angry and want to see, some people want to see solutions, but by and large, that doesn't make up the majority of people. I mean, if 8 million people came out and protested in New York City, they would smother the whole city. I mean, you're looking at thousands of people versus millions of people. Millions of people will not want to have anything to do with what this woman, and I use that term very lightly because she's a teenager, it looks like, they're not going to want to have anything to do with what she's talking about.
Things. We have a state action against our police department, which gives us legal mechanisms in the very short term. There's lessons from all over the country, all over the world that we're looking to take immediate steps while we work toward building the systems that we would need to imagine that future.
Do you understand that the word dismantle or police free also makes some people nervous? For instance, what if in the middle of the night, my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Stand by, folks, because this is the absolute dumbest answer you will ever hear in history right here.
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that comes from a place of privilege because
privilege. She says that comes from a place of privilege. Yeah, that's about right. That's more like it. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, that wanting somebody to protect you from criminals that would come into your house and pose a violent threat against you, that wanting that is a point of privilege. Let me hear that again.
Nervous, for instance, what if in the middle of the night, my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that comes from a place of privilege because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality where calling the police may mean more harm is done. And so in the very immediate, we have to lean into whatever changes we can make in our existing police department. I think we look to cities like Camden, New Jersey, that completely
First of all, what she just said makes no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense. She's saying that if somebody is in your house, okay, calling the police may cause more people to get hurt than not calling them. So according to her, you're just supposed to, I don't really know what you're supposed to do. That was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Then she references Camden, New Jersey, one of the dirtiest, most violent places you could ever go in the United States. At one point, it was the most violent place in the United States. And that's who she is referring to. That is who she is saying that they should be more like, Camden, New Jersey.
We build up systems, and we've already done that. We are not starting from scratch. We have invested in community-based safety strategies. We have knowledge in our community across the city. We've done an analysis of all the reasons people call 911.
Goldfish have knowledge in their head as well, but it only lasts about 15 seconds. Nothing that she is saying, the knowledge that she is providing, is backed up by what is effective. No matter who she references or what she says, it is not an effective way. And the media doesn't give anybody else a platform to talk about what is effective. No, they don't give anybody that platform.
And have looked at ways we can shift the response away from armed police officers into a more appropriate response for mental health calls, for some domestic violence calls, for health-related issues. And so the groundwork is laid already in Minneapolis for us to build on that, to learn from folks around the world, but really also to listen to our community and put those community voices front and center.
I mean, part of me really wants this to happen because I want to sit back and I'm 100% sure that this is going to end very badly. But on the other hand, I don't want people to get hurt or raped or, violence to occur in an area. I wish they would listen and get it right. But this kind of nonsense and leadership is, and yes, she looks as dumb and clueless as she sounds.
Build up those systems even further.
On a political point, as a Democrat, are you worried that you have just handed President Trump a great talking point or slogan or battle cry for his reelection to be able to say, see, Democrats want to get rid of your police. First, they come to take away your guns, as he says. Now they're taking away your police officers. Does that concern you?
That's why I said at the beginning that it starts with telling the truth. And I think we've been afraid of a lot of things, of those political dynamics, of what would happen in our city, to have our police force hearing these kinds of words. And that fear is what we have to really work through because, again,
I don't even know what it is like my jaw is on the floor every time I listen to this person speak. Nothing that she is saying makes any sense, has any solutions in it, and is based in absolute leftist, mind-boggling stupidity.
That's the fear that so many in our community are facing. That's the fear that we see, from George Floyd's family or the family of Jamar Clark or Justine Damon, who are also killed by Minneapolis police, who have told us we never want to see this happen again. And so those efforts that
then you sit down and get the police department. First of all, put the right people in charge. The problem with departments like Minneapolis is that they consistently promote people who will bow to city council members and to mayors and governors. They don't put people in there who say, listen, we have a real problem here. We have got to get a handle on this violence. And you don't have city leaders who will say, let's hold the people accountable. Let's try to get the people to clean up their neighborhoods. Let's get people that are good people to sit down with law enforcement and talk about this. None of them do that. They don't do that.
Taken so far to stop this, to make sure no one is killed in this way, have not worked. So our statement is to try something new.
You don't have, okay, that's enough. You don't have people in those neighborhoods, in that environment, getting killed because it is a great peace-loving neighborhood. You don't. I don't care what anybody says. It's because it's a violent area. They have a lot of crime there, and police are aggressive. If the community worked together to police itself, then having law enforcement would actually work, and law enforcement wouldn't have to be so aggressive. Again, as I said at the beginning of the show, and I said in multiple shows before, I think cops have become too aggressive. They don't know how to be a part of the community. One of the biggest reasons is because of the way the communities are. You cannot, listen, read the Old Testament, learn from the Jews in the desert. They wanted a king, even though they had God with them, they wanted a king. They get a king, they think it's going to make them better. It doesn't make them any better. The people had to change. Moses sat on the mountain arguing back and forth, telling God, those are your people. And God say, no, those are your people. And they go back and forth. No, those are yours. And when Moses came off the mountain, They were sitting down there. He'd been gone for 40 days talking with God on top of the mountain. He comes off the mountain, and already they had taken all their gold and shaved it into the form of a calf and were worshiping it. That is about the whole mindset that you're going to see in most of these places around the country. It is a mindset and a culture that has to change, not necessarily just the police departments in the way that we police. You can do all you want to change police or to get rid of them. It's not going to get rid of the drug problem, the violence problem. It's not going to get rid of the fact that in the inner city, blacks are preached to over and over and over again, whether it be on TV or by themselves, that you are black and that you are oppressed and that you will never be able to be what you want to be because you are oppressed and because you are black. Again and again and again, this is what they're told, and that you have nothing else except to sell drugs. You got, young people making a ton of money to them, selling drugs. It's going to look way more promising, and the culture that they live in and the pressure that's put upon them, they will do that versus achieving. That's a societal problem. And the inner cities have never been cleaned up. And you know who suffers from that? I'll tell you who really does suffer from that. Everybody suffers from that. The people, though, that have dark skin, who've never done anything bad in their life, who are just achieving like everybody else, they do suffer from that. They suffer from that, and they are directly affected by the aggression and the unchecked society that exists within the inner city. The breakdown of the family unit around the country and the world, the breakdown of ethics and morals, the breakdown of how people or young people, and not just young people now, young people and old people learn about what's right or wrong. You're taught by the Kardashians about what's right or wrong, or by Bravo Television, or by Nickelodeon, or MTV still. You're taught by social media and what social media tells you is right or wrong, which is highly censored by leftists. Those are the things that are going to make true changes. You sit down with law enforcement. You teach them how to be more a part of the community and get rid of people who can't seem to get that. There's a lot of knuckleheads who just can't get it. And smart cops, not just tactically smart, but people who know how to read situations. But see, here's the problem with all this. What you see, the majority of people, you have not seen what I've seen as far as poverty or in the inner city working there as law enforcement. You haven't seen what it's like to be somebody who's living in that circumstance. And so the violence and the sheer unethical behavior and a society in the inner city that just doesn't clean itself up. The whole society. And remember, this isn't a black-white thing. This is a societal thing. The society has allowed this to go on because it doesn't matter if you're black or white, poor or rich. You can still be clean and take care of yourself and raise good kids and be ethical and moral. I mean, getting an education, at least up to you graduate from high school, doesn't cost anything. And really where all this started is when we stopped disciplining children in school. And we made it unpopular, not we, but society made it unpopular to study religion or to read your Bible. Because we don't have to go out and work like we used to. If you had a family and you had 5 kids, they were all working as young kids. Growing, either working in the fields or doing something to bring money home so that you could survive. Now, survival is determined on whether or not you got a good selfie. Society, and I'll keep preaching this over and over, it's like a broken record now, is that it's a societal change. And those who suffer aren't just people with dark skin because of society and where it's going. We all suffer, and we're all being duped. Everybody's being duped, whether it's by the celebrities that are telling you the way it should be, the politicians are the ones who make the decisions and how it should be, somehow, some way, based on nothing. But the thing that is most damning to everybody now is how available the stage is to these people who know nothing. Let me say that again so you get it, okay? So you just get it. The most damning people in this world now are the people who are given the stage, that are given the microphone on CNN or Fox, that are ones that are the quote-unquote social media influencers. They don't give the stage anymore to people who have understanding, experience, and knowledge, which equals wisdom. They don't give the microphone to them. They give them to the people who are the most divisive. They give the stage to the people who are the dumbest and the most incompetent. They give the stage to activists who don't really care about what's best. They give the stage to people who are truly hurting this nation. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace. We out of here.